So we're going to talk a little bit about investing in fintech. And we have here a VC, an angel investor, turned back into an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur. So, gentlemen, let's talk about that real quick. First of all, let's take 30 seconds and introduce yourselves.
Okay. Sylvester Yannick, several years at MCA Capital, managing growth technology fund, investing across Central and Western Europe. So we have several companies from fintech sector in our portfolio, and this is the key focus of my team, or has been for the last 2-3 years.
Great.
David Putz, I'm a recent angel investor. So I was the co-founder of Intelligo years ago, then was in HSBC, Barclays, and then built a bank in the Czech Republic. So I've been a banker for many years, and then I converted over to being an angel investor, and now I work practically full-time in Billon, which is a distributed ledger payments company.
Naveen Prasad, I'm an entrepreneur and advisor to multiple startups. Currently, I'm working on my third startup, which is into mobile payments, and Poland is one of our key target markets, and that's why I'm very keen to be here, and looking forward to meet strategic partners and investors later.
So I'm going to ask you an easy question to warm it all up a little bit. Why is world of finance, so hard to change?
I think it's about dominant logic. Yeah, every organization or sector has its own dominant logic, which is we used to do things that way in the past. So on top of that, you have regulations. If you combine those two things, I think that's actually the answer for your question.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, having run a bank, I can tell you that the regulatory piece of a bank is unfortunately quite painful. So whenever it came to a discussion of here's the list of the projects that we're going to be doing, anything that was regulatory just jumped up to the top of the list, and everything else just kind of got pushed down. Also combined with the fact that still, despite the fact that for years and years and years, companies have been chipping away at banks, it's still a massively profitable sector. So why change quickly? I mean, why not just go ahead and run BAU? I can get another 10% cost savings out. I can get another 10% on the revenue uplift. That type of a growth rate is quite acceptable in the banking market. So why change?
So from entrepreneur perspective?
Yeah, I'll give a more perspective from the startup scheme of things. I mean, two aspects. First is, there are a lot of bigger, larger fishes around, right? So entering into the market, and you need to be different in your technology to disrupt it, to do something different that attracts eyeballs from the larger players. And the second is obviously I have to reiterate the regulatory aspects of things. I mean, if you run a fintech business vis-a-vis an e-commerce or a food delivery, there's a lot of layers of regulations that you need to go through and come. So that's really challenging in the initial phase, at least.
I got you. So that's a great segue to the next question, which is, it's a big industry, and it has a lot of different segments. We kind of bundle it all into fintech and banking and finance. But what areas do you think are really ripe for disruption?
Look, I think that the, as we call it, first wave of fintech companies competing on cost and convenience is already there. So as we look at fintech segment, we actually are searching for companies focusing on B2B segment. And you can understand B2B as two areas. One is just services for SMEs, like factoring, more sophisticated loans, any kind of financial services. And the other one that refers exactly to the core of the financial sector, which is backends of banks or insurance companies. And we expect that there will be much more innovation in that area. I think in terms of, let's say, more innovative credit scoring engine approaches, some deployment of machine learning or artificial intelligence to improve the performance of those tools. And on top of that, there will be a key battlefield, which is OPEX. When you compare OPEX of the banking system based on traditional IT stack and you compare it to the cost per customer of the cloud-based system, it's like 10 to 1. So there will be a cost pressure with respect to the operational layer of many financial institutions. And on top of that, it's blockchain. Yeah? So KYC, general ledger, or transactional services, these are areas when you actually could play with cost and efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think from my point of view, we're at like an unprecedented moment in history because you have basically the convergence of mobile technology with cloud computing, with open APIs, and of course other technologies, such as machine learning and these sorts of things. So what's happening is the transformations of how people relate to money, how they work with money, how companies work with money, is just transforming massively. And I'll give you one example. I mean, Billon is a blockchain company. So when we had first started looking at, getting investors, I remember looking at the WorldPay report, and WorldPay was predicting that the market for alternative payments was $1.3 trillion. Fast forward 2 years, and that same report now says it's $2.3 trillion. Look at the market for credit cards and normal banking cards, and it's barely moved. So you're seeing an explosion of, whatever payments, IoT payments. Now you have esports, completely different markets. I think you're seeing an absolute explosion of new business models, and it's quite exciting.
For me, it's mainly, I talk from the consumer perspective. So anything that brings or, enhances the user experience, makes it easy for the consumer. And there where you put into disruption is what we are going to change, right? Putting into some perspective, as already mentioned, the competition is too high. If you look into the landscape in 2008, I think there were roughly 900 million of VC investment in fintech firms, which currently stands at more than 19 billion. So the competition is so huge. You need to be different at each step. But in the end, it's about your solution that you provide, how easy is it for the consumer. And if you are, I think there was one good session payments where I had, if you're able to make a payment without the guy even realizing it, that's something that is more disruptive.
So AI is certainly starting to eat into fintech, right? It's starting to eat whole categories of finance. What are your thoughts? I mean, you have a stealth startup. It couldn't be AI related, could it?
Not really, but I mean the key is how you use AI to use to make use of the data that you have around it, right? So fintech, in the end, there's humongous data that humanity is presenting to you. You need to use, for me, what's important is use AI to make use of that data and be different from others who are doing it.
Well, a good example is that, I don't know why this is not better known, but 20% of New York hedge funds closed last year. 20%, over 1,000 hedge funds, in large part because of algorithmic trading.
Exactly, and there's also robo-advisors coming in, right? So you pretty much don't need humans to manage your portfolio. You have robo-advisors coming in, so yeah, those are the fields where AI is really moving ahead.
And from blockchain perspective, I'm sure AI or kind of intelligence in the machine is a part of what you're doing.
Well, it's going to be something that we're going to connect to through APIs, because at the end of the day, what we're able to do is we're able to simultaneously move money and data at the same time. So we're finding our sweet spot is this ability to disrupt small micropayments, which were others previously anonymous, and now basically turned it into a digital experience. So the amount of data that you're going to have that you can mine on what's happening, what customers are doing, where they're doing it, how they're doing it, is going to be phenomenal. But at the end of the day, we're not an AI company. So if anybody has an AI company and you want to connect to us via APIs, I'll give you my email address.
There you go.
I mean, just because you said APIs, now with the PSD2 thing coming up in January, it will play even larger role.
That's true. And Sylvester, I mean, you're looking at investments. How much is the AI buzzword coming into play for you guys in fintech?
Look, be very specific, looking at even at our portfolio company, it's fraud detection. Yeah, so if you have like a remittance business, as you know from our portfolio, they do this stuff just for fraud detection. Yeah, to some extent for KYC, which is also related to that, but at the end of the day, I think it's a powerful tool. The other one, I think, is targeting the customer or just mass customization of products or service for targeted customers. So tracking data, tracking behavior, you can actually build the tailored product for the specific but mass customer.
Right. Well, we can talk about this for a long time. It's a fascinating
Definitely.
area. But unfortunately, we're out of time for today. Please seek out these gentlemen and grab their card, grab their email, and make use of their expertise and their companies. And please help me thank them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.